My family sided with my abusive ex to keep peace. I was sitting at my mother's kitchen table when she said his name out loud, like it was a normal thing to do. The clock on the wall said 7:18 p.m. The smell of burned onions hung in the air. My sister was standing by the sink, arms crossed, staring at a chip in the counter like it was interesting. No one was looking at me. "We talked to Mark," my mother said. We all did. I didn't say anything at first. My phone was face down next to my elbow. I could feel it buzzing, but I didn't pick it up. I already knew who it was. He had been calling since I parked. My father cleared his throat. He does that when he thinks a sentence needs to sound official. "This doesn't have to be a fight," he said. "We're just trying to keep things calm." I looked at him. His face was flat, careful. He was wearing the same brown sweater he always wore when he didn't want to get involved. I noticed a small stain on the cuff. Coffee, probably. "Calm for who?" I asked. My mother sighed like I was being unreasonable. "For everyone. For the family." The word family landed heavy. I felt my shoulders tense up, like they do right before something bad happens. I pushed my chair back an inch, then stopped. I didn't want to be the first one to move. "He told us he's worried about you," my sister said. She finally looked at me. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. "He said you've been unstable." That got me. I laughed once, short and sharp, before I could stop myself. "Unstable," I said. "That's what he's going with?" My mother winced. "Don't be sarcastic." I stood up then. The chair scraped loud against the floor. My hands were shaking, so I pressed them flat on the table. The wood was sticky under my palms. "You know what he did?" I said. I kept my voice even. I had practiced this sentence so many times. "You were there. You saw the bruises." My father looked down at the table. My sister shifted her weight. No one answered. My phone buzzed again. I flipped it over without unlocking it. 3 missed calls. A text preview slid across the screen. "Tell them I just want peace." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "So this is about peace," I said. "That's the word now." My mother nodded. "Yes, peace. We can't keep living like this, with everyone angry and choosing sides." "I didn't choose a side," I said. "I left." She pressed her lips together. "Mark feels like you're punishing him." I stared at her. For a second, I wondered if she was joking. She wasn't smiling. "You invited him here," I said slowly. "Didn't you?" My sister spoke before my mother could. "He asked if he could come by later, just to talk. We thought it might help." The room felt smaller. I glanced at the doorway to the hall, half expecting him to be standing there already, leaning against the wall like he used to, arms crossed, watching. "You didn't tell me," I said. "We didn't want to upset you," my mother said. That did it. Something in me snapped cleanly, like a wire pulled too tight. "You're already upsetting me," I said. "You're siding with him." "No one is siding with anyone," my father said quickly. "This isn't about taking sides." I picked up my phone. My hands had stopped shaking. I opened the last message he sent before today, the one I hadn't shown them yet. I held the screen out. "He threatened me," I said. "This was 3 days ago." No one leaned in to read it. My mother waved her hand dismissive. "He said he was emotional. He didn't mean it." "You talked to him more than you talked to me," I said. "That's not fair," my sister said. Her cheeks were flushed. "We tried to call you." "Once," I said. "At 10 p.m. After you'd already met with him." Silence stretched. The clock ticked loud now. 7:24. My mother stood up and went to the counter. She picked up an envelope I hadn't noticed before, thick, white. She turned it over in her hands, then slid it across the table toward me. "We already did something," she said, "to settle things." I didn't touch it. "What is that?" I left the house without saying goodbye. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry until I was in the car with the engine running and nowhere to go. It was 7:41 p.m. I remember because the radio clicked on automatically, and a news host was talking about traffic on the interstate like nothing had happened. I drove to the grocery store parking lot 3 blocks away and sat there with the lights off. I called my friend Lila first. She didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. Then I called my Aunt Denise, my mother's older sister. She picked up on the second ring. "Are you safe?" she asked immediately. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded flat to my own ears. "He was there." There was a pause. "I know," she said. That was the first crack in something I thought was solid. "You know? They called me this afternoon," she said. "Your mom was very upset." I closed my eyes. "Upset about what?" "About how serious things were getting," she said carefully. "About lawyers." I leaned my head against the steering wheel. "Did she tell you what he did?" Another pause, longer this time. "She said there were arguments on both sides." I hung up after that. I didn't say goodbye to Denise either. I went back to my apartment around 9. Mark's car wasn't there, which shouldn't have mattered, but it did. I locked the door, then locked it again. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and scrolled through old photos on my phone, without really seeing them. I met Mark when I was 26. He was 31. We worked in the same building, different companies. He held doors open, remembered details, told stories about his childhood that made him sound wounded in a way people want to fix. My family liked him immediately. My mother said he was steady. My father said he had a good handshake. The first time he grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt, we were arguing about whether I should go to my cousin's birthday without him. He apologized for 2 days straight. Flowers, notes. He cried in my lap and said he was scared of losing me. I told no one. By the time I finally did, a year later, the story had already calcified into something else. Mark was stressed. Mark had a temper. Mark didn't mean it like that. My family absorbed those versions easily. They fit better with who they thought he was. After I left him, my mother called every day for a week. Not to ask how I was sleeping or if I was scared, but to ask what I planned to do next. If I was sure. If I'd thought about how hard this was for him. When I stopped answering, she stopped calling. At 11:06 p.m., my phone lit up again. A text from my sister. We didn't think you'd react. Like this. I typed and erased 3 responses. Finally, I wrote, he sent me a photo of the envelope before I saw it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. He said you were going to try to make us look bad, she wrote. He said we needed to protect ourselves. I stared at the message. Something slow and heavy settled into place. I opened my email. Earlier that day, buried under spam, was a message from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line. Just a forwarded document attached. A draft statement. My name misspelled in 2 places. Claims I had exaggerated. That I was emotionally volatile. It was dated a week earlier. Before I had even left him. I sat there until after midnight, replaying conversations, timing, the way my mother had avoided my eyes, the way Mark had smiled when he said he just wanted peace. By the time I went to bed, one thing was clear. This hadn't started after I left. It had started while I was still trying to figure out how to survive him. A statement, my father said. Just saying we support a peaceful resolution, that we don't believe Mark is a danger. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of the chair to steady myself. You signed something, I said. About him. My mother nodded. It was for the lawyer. It doesn't mean we don't love you. I laughed again, but it came out wrong, thin and breathy. You told his lawyer I'm lying, I said. No, she said quickly. We didn't say that. We just said we didn't witness anything ourselves. I thought of the night she helped me clean blood off the bathroom floor, the way she avoided my eyes then too. My phone buzzed again. A new message came through. This time it was a photo. It was the envelope, the same one on the table. A picture of it on my mother's counter, taken earlier that day. Below it, one line, they already chose. Don't make this harder. My stomach dropped. I looked up at my mother. Her face went pale when she saw my expression. He's been here already, I said. It wasn't a question. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. At that moment I understood something clearly, all at once. This wasn't about peace. It never had been. The next morning I woke up to my phone ringing at 8:12 a.m. It was my mother. I let it ring until it stopped, then she called again. I answered on the 3rd try, mostly because I wanted it over with. You disappeared last night, she said. No greeting. I left, I said. I told you I was leaving. You didn't say where you were going. That's not something I owe you. She sighed, slow and heavy. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I sat up in bed and rubbed my face. I hadn't slept more than an hour. You signed a statement for his lawyer, I said. Behind my back. It wasn't behind your back, she said. We just didn't think it was necessary to involve you. I laughed quietly. It involves me. It's about me. It's about the situation, she said. And about protecting the family. That word again. Protecting. I thought of the email timestamp. A week earlier. Before I'd packed a bag. Before I'd told anyone I was leaving. When did you first talk to his lawyer? I asked. There was a pause. Not long enough to be accidental. Mark reached out for advice, she said. He was worried you were spiraling. I felt my stomach tighten. That's not what I asked. She lowered her voice, like she used to when she was about to say something she thought was reasonable, but knew I wouldn't like. It was early, before things got so dramatic. Early meaning when, I said. Another pause. Then, late March. I closed my eyes. Late March was when I showed up at her house with a split lip and told her I'd walked into a cabinet. Mark had stood behind me in the doorway, smiling, nodding along. You talked to a lawyer about me before I left. Him, I said. About the situation, she corrected. No, I said. About me. She didn't deny it. That told me more than anything else could have. I was trying to help, she said. You were emotional. You always get emotional when relationships end. It hadn't ended, I said. I was still living with him. Well, she said. That explains why we needed guidance. The call ended shortly after that. She said she had to get to work. She told me to think about being reasonable. She said we could all talk later, calmly, if I wanted to apologize for the way I'd acted. I sat there holding the phone long after the screen went dark. Around noon, Mark emailed me. Not texted, emailed. That alone felt deliberate. The subject line said, "Just want to clear the air." He wrote like he always did when he wanted to sound measured. Short paragraphs, calm language, no insults. "I never wanted this to turn into a legal thing," he wrote. "Your family reached out to me because they were worried. I was honest with them. That's all." I forwarded the email to myself, then took screenshots. I didn't reply. An hour later, my father showed up at my apartment. He didn't call first. He knocked like he used to when I was a teenager, and he wanted to talk, but didn't want to look like he was forcing it. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "We need to talk," he said. "We already did," I said. He stepped inside anyway. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the parking lot. "Your mother is very upset," he said. "She feels like you're accusing her of something." "I am," I said. He nodded slowly, like he was considering that. "You're seeing this through a very emotional lens." I waited. He always filled silence eventually. "Mark came to us months ago," he said. He was concerned. "Concerned about what?" I asked. "About your mental state," he said. "About instability." He said, "You'd been threatening to ruin his life if he left." I felt my heart start to pound. That's a lie. "He showed us messages," my father said. "My screenshots." My mouth went dry. "What messages?" He hesitated. "You saying you'd make sure everyone knew what he was really like. That you'd destroy him." I shook my head. "I said I would tell the truth if he didn't stop." My father finally looked at me. "That's not how it read." Something clicked then, sharp and awful. "He edited them," I said. My father frowned. "Why would he do that?" "Because that's what he does," I said. "He reframes things until he's the victim." "He seemed very genuine," my father said. "And your mother was scared." "Of me," I said. He didn't answer. I went to my desk and pulled out my old phone, the one I kept in a drawer because Mark hadn't known the password. I powered it on. It took longer than I expected. My hands were steady now. I scrolled back through messages from that period, found the conversation, the exact one my father was talking about. "I have the originals," I said, "with timestamps." My father shifted. "That's not necessary." "It is," I said. "Because you already decided who to believe." He rubbed his forehead. "We didn't decide. We just wanted to prevent things from escalating." "By helping him build a case against me," I said. "That's not fair." I handed him the phone. He looked at the screen. His jaw tightened. "That's not what Mark showed us," he said. "I know," I said. "That's the point." He handed the phone back without another word. He stayed another 5 minutes, pacing, saying things like, "This is complicated," and "We're all trying our best." When he left, he told me not to send anything to anyone yet, that we should all slow down. After he was gone, I sat on the floor and stared at the wall until my legs went numb. By evening, my sister called. She sounded tired. "Mark said you're trying to turn us against him," she said. "I'm not trying," I said. "I'm just showing you what's real." "He says you're manipulating evidence," she said. I laughed, loud this time. "Of course he does." There was a long silence. "He also said something else," she said finally. "He said you asked him to talk to Mom first, that you wanted him to explain things because you didn't trust yourself." My chest tightened. "That never happened." "He said it did," she said. "And Mom remembers it that way." That was the moment I understood how deep it went. This wasn't just them choosing him. This was him rewriting me inside my own family, piece by piece, until I was someone they needed protection from. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I opened a folder on my laptop and started saving everything. Messages, emails, screenshots, dates, times. If they were going to believe a version of me I didn't recognize, I was going to need proof just to exist. 2 days later, my mother called a family meeting. That was the phrase she used in the group text, like we were coordinating schedules, not deciding whether I was still believable as a person. She said it would be at my parents' house, Saturday at 4. She added a thumbs up emoji at the end. I didn't respond. I showed up anyway. Mark's car was already there when I pulled into the driveway. The same dark gray sedan, parked cleanly between the lines, like it belonged. I sat in my car for a full minute with my hands on the steering wheel, counting my breaths. In, out. Slow enough not to shake. When I walked in, everyone was already seated. My parents on the couch, my sister in the armchair, Mark at the far end, legs crossed, hands folded loosely in his lap. He looked calm. He always did when he thought he'd won. He stood when he saw me. "Hey," he said softly. "Thanks for coming." I didn't answer. I took the chair closest to the door. My mother clasped her hands together. "Let's try to keep this respectful," she said. "No accusations." Mark nodded. "I agree. I just want clarity." "Clarity," I almost laughed. My father gestured toward me. "Why don't you start?" he said. "Explain why you think everyone is against you." That phrasing landed hard. Against you. Not confused. Not misled. Against. "I don't think everyone is against me," I said. "I think you've been given incomplete information." Mark tilted his head, concerned. "That's not fair," he said. "I've been very open." I looked at him, really looked. The familiar pressure in my chest flared, but I kept my voice steady. You altered messages, I said. You showed them edited screenshots. He sighed, like he was tired. This is exactly what I was talking about, he said to my parents. The paranoia. My mother leaned forward. Honey, we saw what he showed us. It was upsetting. I have the originals, I said again, with metadata. My sister shook her head. You're obsessed with proving something, she said. That's not healthy. Mark reached out, palm up, like he was calming a frightened animal. I never wanted this dynamic, he said. I only went to your parents because you told me to. My heart stuttered. That's a lie. You said you were scared of how you'd come across, he continued gently. You asked me to help explain. I turned to my mother. That's not true. She hesitated. You were very upset around that time. That's not an answer. My father stood. Enough, he said. This back and forth isn't productive. Mark nodded. I don't want to escalate things, he said. I just want everyone to feel safe. Safe. From me. My mother wiped her eyes. We've already spoken to the lawyer, she said. We can't take that back. Then correct it, I said. Tell them you were misled. Silence. My sister looked at me with something like pity. That would make us look complicit, she said, in his behavior. I stared at her. He abused me. She flinched. We don't know that. Something broke then. Not loudly, just a clean internal snap. You know what? I said. You're right, you don't know. Because you never asked. I stood up. Mark watched me carefully like he was tracking a threat. As I reached the door, my father said, If you walk out now, don't expect things to go back to normal. I turned. They already aren't. Outside, the air felt sharp and cold. I sat in my car and locked the doors. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Mark. This didn't have to happen. You're pushing them away. I didn't reply. I blocked his number, then my mother's, then my sister's. As I pulled out of the driveway, I realized something with a clarity that scared me. He hadn't just manipulated them. He'd positioned himself as the reasonable center, and me as the unstable edge. And they'd rearranged themselves around that without hesitation. 3 weeks passed with no contact. I changed my routine without meaning to. Different grocery store, different gas station. I stopped walking the same loop around my apartment complex. At night, I slept with my phone face down and the ringer off, but I still checked it first thing every morning, bracing for something. The proof came quietly, not as a confrontation or a confession, just a document, attached to an email, sent by mistake. It was a Tuesday at 2:37 p.m. I was at work, eating a yogurt at my desk, when an email came through from Mark's lawyer. The subject line read, RE, Statement Revisions, Final. For a moment I thought it was a phishing attempt. The address looked legitimate, but my name was spelled wrong in the greeting. Again, the body of the email was short. Please see attached. As discussed, we've incorporated the family's language and removed references that could be contradicted by existing records. I stared at the screen, my spoon hovering midair. Attached was a PDF. I shouldn't have opened it. I did anyway. It was a draft affidavit. Not the one my parents had signed, but a later version. Revised. Annotated. There were tracked changes. Comments in the margins. One comment, highlighted in yellow, made my chest go tight. We need this to align with the mother's earlier account, March 22nd call. Client insists daughter acknowledged volatility and requested intermediary support. March 22nd. I pulled up my calendar. That was the day after Mark shoved me into the bedroom door, hard enough to crack the frame. The day I'd called my mother crying, telling her I didn't feel safe. I scrolled. Another comment. Remove mention of physical contact. Family did not witness. And this opens liability. Another. Father's recollection differs. Advise family to maintain unified narrative. Unified narrative. I felt cold all over. I forwarded the email to myself, then downloaded the attachment, then took screenshots of everything, including the metadata. The lawyer's email signature included a direct phone number. I didn't call. Instead, I pulled out the folder I'd been building. I lined up timelines, messages, call logs, photos I'd never shown anyone. A picture of my wrist, purple and yellow, time-stamped March 21st at 11:48 p.m. A voicemail from my mother the next morning telling me to try not to upset him further. I called Lila. She answered this time. They've been coordinating, I said as soon as she said hello. My voice sounded strange, distant. Who? She asked. My family, with his lawyer, before I left, while I was still there. She didn't interrupt. She never did when it mattered. I have it, I said. In writing. They aligned their stories. They removed things that didn't fit. That's a big deal, she said carefully. I know. Are you safe right now? Yes, I said. I think so. There was a pause. What are you going to do? I looked at the open PDF on my screen, at the comments that weren't meant for me to see. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm done wondering if I'm crazy. After work, I went home and printed everything. I spread the pages across my living room floor, sorting them by date. I worked slowly, methodically, like I was assembling something fragile. When I was done, the pattern was unmistakable. Mark hadn't just lied. He'd recruited. He went to my parents first, framed me as unstable before I ever said the word abuse out loud. He gave them a role that made them feel important, protective, reasonable. Then he let a professional turn their fear into documentation. And they agreed. At 9:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my mother. Her voice sounded tight, controlled. "We received something today that we weren't supposed to see," she said. "Mark's lawyer contacted us. There's been a misunderstanding. We need to talk." I sat on the couch, staring at the wall. She continued. "Your father thinks we should clarify some things, privately, before this gets worse." I didn't call back. Instead, I emailed the lawyer. One sentence. "Please remove my family members from any further communication regarding me. I am retaining independent counsel. All evidence has been preserved." I didn't know if that was true yet, but it would be. 10 minutes later, a reply came through. Short, polite, careful. Understood. That was it. I powered my phone off and sat in the quiet. For the first time since all of this started, my thoughts felt aligned. Not calm, but clear. They hadn't just chosen him to keep peace. They'd helped him build a version of reality where my pain was inconvenient, my fear was a liability, and my silence was expected. And now I had proof they couldn't smooth over. The fallout didn't come all at once. It came in waves, small enough at first that I thought I could stand upright through them. The day after I emailed the lawyer, my mother showed up at my apartment. No warning. I didn't answer the door. I watched through the peephole as she stood there, smoothing her coat, rehearsing. After 2 minutes, she knocked again. After 5, she left an envelope on the floor and walked away without looking back. I waited an hour before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages, neat, controlled. She wrote about how overwhelmed she'd been, how Mark had presented himself as desperate and afraid, how she'd only wanted to prevent something irreversible. She never wrote the word abuse. She never apologized. The closest she came was, if mistakes were made, they weren't intentional. At the bottom, she asked me to meet her alone. No lawyers, no accusations, just mother and daughter. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, my body reacted like it was back in his apartment. Heart racing, jaw clenched. I caught myself holding my breath without realizing it. Around 3 a.m., I sat on the bathroom floor and cried quietly, the way I used to when he was asleep in the other room. The difference was, this time, there was no one to overhear. Over the next week, messages trickled in. My sister sent a long text about how things got out of hand and how we'd all been under stress. My father left a voicemail saying he hoped we could reset and avoid permanent damage. Permanent damage. Like it was a storm that hit us, not something they participated in. What surprised me wasn't the anger. That came and went. What surprised me was the grief. Sharp, physical grief. I missed the version of my family I thought I had. The one that would have closed ranks around me without hesitation. The one that wouldn't need documentation to believe me. I started therapy again. In the second session, I said, "They helped him," out loud for the first time. Saying it made my chest ache. Saying it also made it real. My therapist didn't rush to soften it. She just nodded and said, "That's a deep betrayal." That word stayed with me. Betrayal. Not misunderstanding, not conflict. Betrayal. Once I named it, I stopped trying to make the reactions hurt less. I stopped drafting messages I never sent. I stopped imagining explanations that would fix everything. The sadness didn't disappear, but it settled into something clearer. They had chosen what felt easier to them, and I was the cost. The external consequences showed up in places I didn't expect. A week after my mother's letter, HR called me into a small conference room at work. The walls were glass, frosted just enough to pretend at privacy. My manager sat beside the HR rep, hands folded, eyes avoiding mine. "We received a call," the HR rep said, "from someone identifying themselves as a concerned family member." I felt my stomach drop. "About what?" "About your well-being," she said carefully. "They expressed concern that recent personal issues might be affecting your stability." There it was again. Stability. "They didn't name Mark," she added quickly, "but they referenced a volatile breakup and potential legal disputes." I sat very still. "Did they provide documentation?" She hesitated. "They referenced affidavits." I understood then how far this had traveled. It wasn't just contained to my family anymore. The narrative had legs. My manager finally spoke. "We're not taking action," he said. "Your work has been solid. This is just something we had to acknowledge." Acknowledge, like a stain you pretend isn't spreading. I went home early that day and called the lawyer whose number Lila had given me. A woman in her 40s with a flat voice and no patience for euphemisms. I told her everything. Dates, names, What had been signed? What had been revised? She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "They didn't just side with him, they became character witnesses against you." Hearing it framed that way made my throat tighten. She advised me to formally notify my family in writing that they were not authorized to speak on my behalf to any third party. She advised me to document the HR interaction. She advised me to prepare for escalation, even if I hoped it wouldn't come. That night, I sent one email, addressed to my parents and my sister. No emotion, just facts. I stated that any further communication with my employer, legal representatives, or acquaintances about my mental state or personal history would be considered harassment. I stated that all prior documentation had been preserved. I asked them not to contact me again, except through counsel. My mother replied within minutes. Just one line. "This is not who you are." I stared at it for a long time before closing my laptop. She was wrong. This was exactly who I was becoming. Someone who protected herself because no one else had. The internal shift was quieter than everything else. No meetings, no emails, just a slow rewiring I didn't notice until it was already happening. I stopped reaching for my phone when something good happened. There was no one left to tell who would hold it gently. When something bad happened, I handled it alone by default, not out of strength, but because my body had learned not to expect backup. In therapy, I talked less about Mark and more about my parents. That surprised me. I kept circling the same moments, the same sentences. We didn't witness anything. We were scared. We needed guidance. I realized how often I'd rewritten myself growing up to stay understandable to them. Softer, less intense, easier to defend. That habit didn't disappear with Mark. He had just recognized it faster than I did. I started noticing how often I questioned my own memory. I'd catch myself thinking, maybe I did say it that way, or maybe it sounded worse than I meant. Then I'd pull out the folder, not to punish myself, but to anchor myself. Dates don't argue, screenshots don't reinterpret themselves. Some nights, I felt hollow. Not sad exactly, empty, like a room after furniture has been removed. Other nights, anger hit so suddenly it startled me. I'd be washing dishes or waiting at a red light and feel it surge, hot and sharp. I learned to let it pass without turning it inward. The hardest part was accepting that love, for them, had always been conditional on my manageability. As long as I stayed within the version of me they could explain away, things were smooth. The moment I became inconvenient, they outsourced judgment. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I didn't miss Mark anymore. I missed the illusion that leaving him would bring me back to safety. Instead, it brought me to myself. That felt terrifying and necessary. The decision didn't feel dramatic. There was no moment where I stood up straighter or felt brave. It came on a Thursday morning while I was making coffee, half awake, staring at a crack in the tile by the sink. I realized I was done waiting for them to understand. Not forgive, not apologize, just understand. I had been holding a door open in my mind, telling myself I'd close it once they finally said the right thing, once they admitted what they'd done, once they chose me without qualifiers. They weren't going to. That same morning, I met with my lawyer in person. She slid a draft across the table. Formal language, clean lines, boundaries made enforceable. It covered no contact, non-disparagement, and instructions for third parties. It wasn't aggressive. It was precise. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. I thought about my mother's message. "This is not who you are." "I already am," I said. We sent it that afternoon. My father called once after, receiving it, left a voicemail. His voice sounded older than I remembered. He said he was disappointed. He said families don't involve lawyers. He said I was hardening myself unnecessarily. I deleted it without replaying it. What I didn't do was announce anything. I didn't post. I didn't explain myself to extended family. I let the silence stand. I let people draw their own conclusions. A strange calm followed. Not relief. Not happiness. Just the absence of waiting. I wasn't bracing for messages anymore. I wasn't rehearsing conversations in the shower. The mental noise quieted. I packed the folder away in a locked drawer. Not because it stopped mattering, but because it didn't need to be within reach anymore. That night, I wrote one sentence in a notebook I'd started using for therapy. "I don't need their permission to be done." I closed the notebook and turned off the light. For the first time, the future didn't feel like something I had to negotiate. It felt like something I could choose. The aftermath wasn't clean. It wasn't a victory. It was just quieter. Months passed. The lawyer handled what needed handling. Mark never contacted me again, at least not directly. I heard through someone else that he told people I'd become unstable after the breakup, that my family had tried to help and been pushed away. I didn't correct it. The people who mattered to me asked. The rest didn't need access to my life. My parents respected the letter. Technically, there were no more calls, no emails. Once my mother mailed a birthday card without a return address. Inside she wrote, "I hope you're finding peace." No acknowledgement, no accountability. I threw it away without opening it twice. What stayed with me was the dull ache of recognition. Looking back, I could see how prepared they'd been to believe him, how easily my fear had been reframed as volatility, how quickly they'd stepped into a role that made them feel responsible instead of complicit. I stopped trying to extract meaning from that. Some things don't resolve, they just end. I built a smaller life, fewer people, clearer edges. I learned what it felt like to trust my own perception without immediately softening it for someone else's comfort. When doubt crept in, I didn't argue with it. I checked the facts. Then I moved on. Sometimes, late at night, I still felt the loss, not of them as they were, but of who I thought they were supposed to be. That grief didn't ask to be solved, it just needed space. On the anniversary of the day I left, I took myself out to dinner, nothing symbolic, just a quiet place with good lighting. I ate slowly. I went home alone. I slept well. Peace, I learned, wasn't something you preserved by sacrificing yourself. It was something you built by walking away when the cost became too high. That was the twist no one warned me about. Losing them didn't break me. Believing myself put me back together.